Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today. For those who don't know me, I am Paige Recker. I am the Access to Care Manager for the Michigan Center for Michigan Center for Rural Health. And really what entails my position is three topics I support. So workforce, telehealth, and behavioral health. And just one of our goals for our strategic goal for 2024 is to provide yourselves and your organizations with telehealth resources. So I know I've got connected here with Anthony and John Holman over at USDA through John Barnes, our executive director, and met to discuss about this USDA distance learning and telemedicine grant. So this program is targeted to rural areas with populations of 20,000 or fewer.
It's frozen.
Oh, did I freeze?
I froze as well. I'm just going to leave my video off.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes that happens, so I apologize. So really that entails the program, in case anyone didn't hear, is targeted to rural areas with populations 20,000 or fewer, and it includes most entities that provide education or healthcare through telecommunications. So besides that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Anthony to talk more about this.
Okay, Paige, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, so let me try to. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, I'm not able to remove that bar.
Okay. I don't know if.
Oh, there we go.
All okay. Right. There we go.
All right, so let's start this. Okay, so, all right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this FY 2024 USDA Distance Learning and Telemedicine Grant webinar. As Paige indicated, my name is Anthony Tyndall. You can feel free to call me Tony. I am the RUS General Field Representative for the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, as well as Ohio. And then we do have a separate General Field Representative that covers the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. His name is Andre Baining, and I will share his contact information just a little bit later towards the end of this presentation. I'm going to go ahead. I know that we have a lot of material to cover, and I know that everybody's busy, so I'm going to just jump right in here. So for the agenda today, I'm going to provide an introduction to the DLT program. So we will also discuss eligibility. So, you know, who is eligible to apply, what type of equipment is eligible for funding, and what are some of the eligible grant purposes of the program. And by the way, we're also going to be discussing some ineligible grant purposes. Then I'll touch on completing an application, and I will share some available resources with you. And then finally, I'll try to leave some time for Q&A at the very end. And I think it generally works best if we try to hold the questions for the very end of the session, please. So with that, I'll provide a very brief introduction into the DLT program. The program is codified in law under U.S. Code 950. The governing regulation for the program is 7 CFR Part 1734. Now, the program is currently closed, which means that we are not currently accepting applications. However, the FY24 funding window is expected to open pretty soon. In fact, it could open by the end of this month. And when that happens, we're going to publish a notice of solicitation of applications in the Federal Register, and we'll also put that up on our DLT website. And the NOSA is going to provide some details like how much funding is available, you know, when the applications are due, where to submit applications, and things like that. And then the agency will also at some point provide an application guide that will be updated to include the requirements that are specific to this FY24 funding cycle. So, what do we mean when we say distance learning? What does telemedicine mean? Well, based on the audience today, I'm going to focus primarily on telemedicine. So as you can see here, telemedicine is a real-time interactive telecommunications link between medical professionals located in one area to patients that are physically located in another area using eligible electronic equipment to exchange healthcare information. So the key here is that real-time interaction that's occurring between doctor and patient, and I really can't stress that enough. That is a requirement of the program. And the typical benefits that we see from some of these projects are that the rural residents receive improved access to care, as well as significantly reduced travel time and travel expense. Okay, so we're going to discuss some of the program eligibility requirements. So applicants must be legally organized as one of the types of entities listed here on the slide. That includes incorporated organizations, either for-profit or not-for-profit, tribal organizations, state or local units of government, and that does include institutions of higher education and schools and school districts and things like that. And then finally, consortia, which I'm going to discuss a little bit further on the next slide. Essentially, we cannot fund sole proprietorships, we can't fund general partnerships, but just about any other legally organized entity is likely to be considered eligible for the program. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, a consortium is an eligible entity type. A consortium is a group of entities that encourage or that engage in common activities to achieve joint objectives. So a consortium can be either formal or informal, and applying as a formal consortium is really no different than applying as any other entity. Applying as an informal consortium, however, is a separate subject entirely. So an informal consortium lacks that legal capacity that we need in order to be able to contract with the federal government. So they must either appoint one entity to be the host organization and apply on behalf of that consortium, or each individual entity must contract separately with RUS, and this can get incredibly cumbersome. So really, long story short, if you're interested in applying as an informal consortium, we will work with you on that. However, I would highly encourage you to appoint like a host entity to take the lead on the project and on the application. Some additional eligibility requirements. All of our programs are focused on rural America. The DLT program requires a minimum rurality score of 20 points. We'll cover this in a little bit more detail when we talk specifically about rurality. There is a minimum matching contribution associated with this grant program of at least 15%. Again, we're going to discuss that in a little bit further detail later. If you are a non-tribal applicant planning to provide service on tribal lands, a tribal resolution of consent is required. And then finally, the minimum grant that you can apply for is $50,000, and the maximum grant that's available is $1 million. What are the eligible purposes of the DLT grant program? First and foremost, we have the purchase or lease and installation of eligible equipment. All of the equipment must be new and non-depreciated. The cost of any leased equipment will be limited to that 3-year grant period. Warranties, site licenses, and maintenance contracts are eligible, with the caveat that they must be purchased concurrently with the eligible equipment. Acquiring and developing instructional programming, that is a capital asset. This is third-party instructional programming. It can't be developed by the awardee staff, as you're going to find out here in a moment when you talk about ineligible grant purposes, as we can't fund salaries. So this is This has to be developed by a third party. Acquiring vendor technical assistance and instruction on learning how to use the equipment is also eligible, but that amount is limited to 10% of the grant amount. Something that's kind of new to this program is that the purchasing and installation of broadband facilities is also now eligible. That is limited to 20% of the requested grant amount. And there is also the caveat that the facilities must be owned by the applicant. They cannot be owned by the local telephone company or the local internet service provider. And here are some examples of eligible equipment. Now, just because something is listed here doesn't mean it's automatically eligible. Applicants must demonstrate that the predominant purpose, so that's 50% or more of the use of each of these items, and every item in the budget, for that matter, has to meet the definition of distance learning or telemedicine. And as promised, here are some ineligible grant purposes. So application preparation costs are not eligible, as those are considered to be operating expenses. Neither are salaries, wages, or employee benefits. All recurring expenses, including the broadband connection fees, they're all ineligible. The only exception that I'm aware of is, again, that 3 years of maintenance that is eligible if you, again, purchase it concurrently with the eligible equipment. Equipment that doesn't have telemedicine or distance learning as its essential function, again, is ineligible. And any costs incurred prior to RUS receiving your grant application are ineligible as well. Other ineligible grant purposes include building construction, renovation, or alteration. We do obviously allow some wiring to occur within some rooms, but wholesale wiring of entire buildings, that's something that we can't fund. We can't duplicate facilities already providing sufficient DLT services. This is generally only a problem if you are a previous DLT grantee. We can't fund projects that propose to simply connect different buildings on the same campus. That's really not distance learning or telemedicine. And basically, any purpose that's not specifically identified as eligible in the regulation is therefore ineligible for the program. Let's talk a little bit about completing an application. First, we're going to discuss the registration requirements. Oh, this is in the way. Okay, so you're going to have an active registration at sam.gov. This is the system for award management before you're going to be able to register to apply in grants.gov. And that registration is going to have to remain active during the grant period. Now, this process, I'm told, can take some time. So if you don't currently have an active SAM registration, now would be a great time to start that process. When you're completing the SAM registration process, you must certify to the financial assistance reps and CERTs. This is critical. If it's not done, the agency can't award you a grant. The application guide, when it's done, will go into some detail as to how to make sure you do this properly. Make sure that you're making those financial reps and certs in sam.gov. And now I'm frozen. There we go. All right. So when the SAM registration is complete, the system is going to assign a unique entity identifier, or UEI. You have to have a UEI in order to apply. And the UEI must be for the applicant and not for some other affiliate of the applicant. and you must apply using the legal name of the applicant. Sometimes that gets folks into trouble. We have to have the applying entity using their legal name on the application. Okay, so now let's talk about the components of a complete application. So, as I mentioned, you will apply for this DLT grant at grants.gov. Now, there are several components that are listed here, but the only form that's actually in grants.gov is the standard form 424. The rest of these items are basically just attached to the SF 424. Many of the components are really just written narratives that you can provide via Word document or PDF. Several of the other components are going to be you're going to be able to use some of the worksheet templates that we have available. I'm not going to take the risk of jumping off of this slide deck right now and not being able to get it back. We're going to take a look at these worksheets when we're done. Basically, you don't have to use them. They're not required, but they show the type of information that we need, and they put it in the best format to present it for reviewing and scoring purposes. So I don't know why you wouldn't use the workshops. I would highly the worksheets. I would highly recommend that you do. But again, we'll take a look at those a little bit later when we look at the various resources that are available on the DLT website. So let's dive a little deeper into each one of these components. We'll start with the description of the project sites. So you must provide a list of all locations that will receive grant-funded equipment or will serve as a critical piece of the proposed project. And these locations have to be identified as either a hub site, an end user site, or a hub end user site. Now, we provide definitions for these various sites at different locations. But basically, a hub is where the content for this or the service, where the content originates or the service that is being provided originates. So for our purposes today, think about a large hospital in an urban area where a specialist may be located. And then an end user site is where the person or persons receiving the benefit are located. So again, think about a small medical clinic that's located in an isolated rural area. That is a typical end user site. And then a hub end user site is a site that both provides as well as receives services. All right, so the executive summary. Excuse me. This is your chance to tell your story to the grant reviewers and scorers. So use it as an opportunity to provide a high-level overview of the project. Basically, why is it needed? How is it going to address those needs? And then who's going to benefit from it? You'll have to tell us the total cost of the project and provide a breakdown of grant versus match. Is it predominantly distance learning or is it predominantly telemedicine? It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both. However, you must designate that it has a primary purpose, one or the other. As you can see here, I've highlighted this statement of whether the project is proposing to reduce substance use disorder in rural areas. That's because in the past several rounds, we've had money, that's been set aside for this purpose. And I don't really know if that's going to be the case in FY24 or not. So you may or may not have to address this item. And we'll talk a little bit more about special consideration points, a little bit later, as these do change from round to round. We're going to get into the scoring, so we'll talk about that then. The executive summary also needs to include an overview of the telecommunications system that's being developed, as well as a description of the sites involved in the project and the number of rural residents that will be served by the project. And at the very end of the executive summary, we needed to include a publicly releasable project description. And this includes a title, the hub and end user site locations, excuse me, a brief project description, and then how many people are actually going to benefit from the project. Okay, so now let's take a look at the scoring criteria. The first objective scoring category is rurality. Again, all of our programs have a very rural focus. So it's important that the projects that we fund provide benefits to people that live in rural America. And so each end user site will be assigned a rurality score. It's based on the 2020 decennial census population of the community in which the site is located, and also its proximity to urban areas. So you will use both the census data and our DLT map to make this calculation. And I'm going to show you the DLT map a little bit later. It's also included on the website under the To Apply tab. And it is a very helpful resource we'll take a look at. Now, if the project includes non-fixed end user sites, so for example, if you have patients that will receive services that are being provided via a mobile clinic, that would be considered non-fixed. Then the rurality score for those projects is actually determined by the hub location or locations. Again, the score assigned to each end user site is based on census population of the community where that site is located. And as you can see here, the smaller the community, the better it scores. And as I stated earlier, the average score of all of your end user sites must be a minimum of 20 for the project to be eligible for the program. The second objective scoring category is economic need. Each end user site will be assigned an economic need score, and it's based on the small area income and poverty estimates or SAPE percentage, and that's based on the county where the site is located. So there are several ways that you can find SAPE data. Again, it's going to be available via the census website. But probably the easiest way is to use the spreadsheet that we have available on our DLT website that lists all of the various SAPE scores for all of the various counties. And then the DLT map is also going to have a layer where you should be able to find the SAPE score for the county in question as well. All right. As you can see here, the higher the poverty percentage, the better it scores. There is no minimum threshold for this category, however. Remember, we said your project have to average 20 in the rurality calculation. There is no minimum for economic need. The third and final objective scoring category is special consideration. Now, again, this category does change from year to year, and that's why I've highlighted these items here, because these were the categories that received special consideration under the FY23 window. It really remains to be seen what the categories are going to be under the FY24 window. Again, the maximum amount of points that you can receive in this category is 10. So you may have end user sites that fall into a number of different categories, but you can really only claim one of them. So the maximum points that you can get under for special consideration is 10. And finally, the one and only subjective scoring category is needs and benefits. Up to 30 points are available in this category. You know, applicants must address the need for the project in the affected areas, as well as the benefits that will be derived from the project. And then finally, you must document any local community involvement in the planning, implementing, or financing of the project. This is sometimes something that gets overlooked. Don't overlook the importance of local involvement. We do take it into consideration as we're completing this subjective scoring process. Next, we're going to discuss the matching requirement. As I mentioned earlier, program does have a minimum match contribution of at least 15% of the requested grant amount. The match can take the form of either cash or in-kind contributions. However, if you plan to use anything other than cash, I highly recommend that you reach out and we have a conversation about that, because I want to know exactly what it is that you're intending to use as your match, because there are several pitfalls associated with using in-kind match. And I think that we would prefer to avoid those pitfalls, if at all possible, before you put a lot of time and effort into applying only to find out that your match is not actually match. This just indicates that other federal dollars are not eligible to be used as match for this program unless it's specifically authorized under statute. And if you're going to use non-federal grants as match, then you're going to need to provide evidence that the grant has been awarded and that there are no restrictions against using it as match for the DLT award. Next component is the scope of work. The scope of work is basically a narrative explaining how the goals of the project are going to be met. At a minimum, you should include the specific activities that are going to be performed, exactly who's going to complete those activities, and then the timeframes under which they will be completed. And a copy of the budget is also going to have to be included in this section. I'm going to take a look at the template for the budget in just a minute. Financial information and sustainability. This is also a written narrative that demonstrates the financial feasibility of the project. So do you have sufficient resources and expertise not only to complete the project, but to sustain it into the future? So obviously we would prefer that the projects that we fund that can continue to provide benefits well beyond that 3-year grant period. So this is your opportunity to explain how you're going to do that. Statement of experience. The statement of experience is also narrative, but I don't know, for some reason this is the one section or one component that we do limit the amount of information that you can provide. This statement of experience is limited to 3 single-spaced pages. Basically, you describe your experience in implementing projects like the one that's described in your application. And if you don't have any experience implementing a similar project, then you discuss, how you're going to overcome that lack of experience in this section. Next, we're going to discuss the telecommunications system plan. This section includes both the narrative as well as a map or diagram of the service area of the project. The system plan narrative is a description of the overall network and the use of the proposed equipment. Basically, you have to lay out every budget line item, tell us exactly what it is, what it does, and assign a DLT percentage of use to it. From my perspective as a reviewer of these applications, this is probably one of the more informative sections that I find. It's very, very helpful. The other thing that's very helpful is the map, because let's face it, I'm a civil servant. Sometimes you need to draw me a picture, and that's exactly what you get to do here. So you're showing me on a map where all of your sites are physically located, and I can see basically where the service is originating and where the beneficiaries are physically located. It as well is a very helpful tool when we're reviewing and scoring these applications. Compliance with other federal statutes. So there are several certifications that applicants must make as part of the application process. We have a checklist that we provide that addresses 4 of these certifications. They're listed here. It looks like this. I'll show you the entire checklist here in a moment, but this is the section of the checklist that takes care of these four certifications. By signing the checklist, you're agreeing to the language that's included in those four certifications. So it's imperative that the checklist actually be signed and dated by an authorized representative of the grantee, or excuse me, of the applicant in this case. Evidence of legal existence and authority to contract with the federal government. So as we've already discussed, that there is this need to register in sam.gov. And under this section of the application, you're actually going to provide a copy of your active SAM registration. And again, the SAM registration and the UEI must be for the applicant, not for an affiliate of the applicant. And you must provide evidence of legal existence. So the evidence that you provide really is going to depend on how you are legally organized. Again, the application guide is going to go into some detail as to exactly what we're going to expect to see in terms of evidence of legal existence. Environmental impact and historic preservation. So under this section, applicants must discuss the proposed project's impact on the environment and on historic properties. Now, if all you're doing is buying equipment that's going to be placed in existing buildings, then it's unlikely that there's going to be any environmental impact to that project. However, as I mentioned earlier, we do allow the construction of broadband facilities now. So if your project is going to include construction of facilities, then there very well may be some impact to the environment. Either way, the subject has to be addressed. Consultation with the USDA state director. Let me just say that I am not the state director for Michigan. I'm the general field representative for Michigan. We'll have a link in the application guide where you can find contact information for the Michigan RD state director. And this process basically requires applicants to send a copy of their executive summary for the project to the state director for review. And then the state director will respond with a letter, and applicants must attach a copy of that letter to their application. It's really just a formality for the most part. But it is a step that has to be completed. So, again, don't just skip it. If your application, were to come in without this letter from the state director, we will be reaching out to you, asking you to obtain a copy of a letter. Application submission. So, as I mentioned earlier, the program is currently closed. Once it opens, that notice of solicitation of applications will be published in the Federal Register, and it will also be placed on our website. And again, the NOSA is going to provide details like, how much funding do we have for this program for this year, when applications are going to be due. Again, you're going to apply at grants.gov. You will complete the SF 424 in grants.gov, and then you attach all the other requirements to the SF 424. And remember that sam.gov registration is required before you're going to be able to apply at all. Available resources. As I mentioned, we've finally gotten to the point where we can take a look at some of the resources that are available on the DLT website. Again, these are all available under the To Apply tab. So we're going to go there now, and we'll be close out of this. And again, this is going to be in my way. All right, so this is the DLT landing page. When you come here, you're actually going to land on the overview. As you can see, the program is currently closed. There's a lot of good information here on the overview page, but as I mentioned, the most of the very valuable resources you're going to find under this To Apply tab. And we've already mentioned several of these. The first one that we mentioned were the worksheets. They come in Excel format. So there's several worksheets here. First is the description of the project sites. So you're going to be expected to lay your project sites out on here, and you're going to be expected to provide some very specific information about those sites. You'll have a rurality calculation worksheet, an economic need calculation worksheet, special consideration calculation worksheet, match calculation worksheet, and then finally a template that you can use for a budget, a line item budget for the project. Again, we don't say that you have to use these worksheets, but this is the information that we need, and this is really the format that we need it in. So there's really no need to avoid using these worksheets. Okay, so SAPE poverty data, I mentioned that as well. There is a worksheet that will tell you the SAPE score for every county. So if you scroll down here, we're looking
We
at
can't see the website.
Can't what?
We can't see the website. It's still showing your PowerPoint.
It is.
Yeah,
How about now?
I still see the PowerPoint. Yeah, just on the helpful links slide is what I see.
Interesting. Okay, so let me see if I can't share. Let's see if I can go to. I always use. I'll have to apologize because I always use Teams, and then when I use something other than Teams, it doesn't work the same. So looks like I might have to change.
I was gonna say if maybe unshare and then try to share screen again.
Let's see that.
Yes.
All right. Apologize for that.
Hmm.
Go back again. This is I think the best way to find this, if you go to rd.usda.gov, let's just start here. RD, which is rural development.usda.gov. I don't know if there's a way to get rid of this bar. Let me just see if I can put it down there. it's very annoying. Programs and services, telecommunications programs, that takes you to the telecom landing page. We have several programs. This is the distance learning and telemedicine grant program. If you click there, it brings you to the DLT landing page. Again, this is the overview page. There's a lot of good information here. But again, what we're looking for primarily, you'll find under the To Apply tab. Let me see if I click these, if this will work. Sample worksheets. Can you see that?
I can't see the file yet. I see the
Right.
downloads, but
So let me. I don't know if I can. I apologize. I don't know if I can share multiple screens, but I'm just going to do it this way.
I can see it now.
Okay, so description of project sites. Again, looks like this. The rurality calculation worksheet looks like this. Economic need, special consideration, match, budget. These are all available on the DLT website. And it doesn't look like it's going to let me do anything other than, all right, so let's go here. This, you should be seeing the SAPE poverty score worksheet. Column H tells you what the poverty score is for every county. If you just scroll down to Michigan, you'll be able to get the SAPE score for any county that you're interested in. And I mentioned that you could also find this via the DLT map. So let's go here and see if it's going to allow me to show you the DLT map. Do you see that?
Yes.
The map. Okay, so there's going to be several layers on here. The you can toggle these on and off. Let's just toggle off several of these off, because really the non-rural area, this is the most important layer for our purposes today. So this map will show you non-rural areas. Non-rural areas are not necessarily off limits, but again, this program has a distinctly rural focus. So it's generally the hub sites that we find in non-rural areas, and in many instances we're not placing any equipment at those hub sites anyway, and so they don't really factor into the score. The only time when they would really factor into the score is again on those projects that have non-fixed end user sites, or a project that might be a hybrid that includes both fixed and non-fixed sites. In the instances where we have any non-fixed sites, we have to use something in order to determine the score for those sites, and that's the hub where they're getting their service from. Okay, so what else do we want to look at here? Looked at the map, the state poverty score, the various worksheets, the application checklist. I think I'm going to have to. That is a spreadsheet as well. And let's see. I don't know if I see it here. Let's see if I just share my screen, if that makes a difference. Hopefully. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is the application checklist. Again, it's a document that you can use clearly as you're putting your application together, and check the boxes as you go. Make sure that you don't skip over anything. But it's also more than that. Again, it is the vehicle that you're going to use to make several certifications. Those are included under Section J. And then it's critical that an authorized representative of the grant or of the applicant sign and date this checklist. Right, let's go back. The other thing that I wanted to make sure to show you that's in here is the application guide. Now, again, this is the FY23 application guide. As soon as the FY24 funding window opens, the FY24 application guide will be placed up here. But, as you're completing your application, it's critical that you use this guide. It's very, very helpful. I don't know how you would complete an application without it. So it's a very, very useful tool. Let's go back to the checklist, or excuse me, to the website. Really, you can look at the SF 424. Again, there's a lot of very helpful resources here. A couple of other things that I wanted to make sure that I showed you while I have you. First of all, I mentioned that Andre Baining is the GFR for the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. If you come to the Contact Us link here at the top, when I said go to www.rd.usda.gov, if you come to Contact Us, you can find You just click on Michigan. You will find my contact information as well as Andre's contact information. And then the other thing I wanted to show you from here, remember I said you have to provide evidence of consultation with the Michigan RD State Director. If you go to the state office's link from the rd.usda.gov site, you'll once again find a map. And again, if you click on Michigan, it will take you to the Michigan State Office landing page. And then about halfway down the page, you can view all Michigan contacts. So if you click on this, the state director is actually Brandon Fewens. The state office is located in East Lansing, so that contact information is right here. So that is pretty much it. I think that leaves us with a little bit of time for Q&A. I did want to mention that we also have John Holman on with us. John was previously covering Michigan for a while, and I'm sure that many of you have probably already met and talked with John. With that, Paige, I'll turn it back to you. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to try to field those now.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we had one in the Q&A just asking if we'll have access to these slides after the webinar. Yes, I will have them sent out. We're going to put it on our YouTube page, but I will, John Barnes and Jeff Naj of our office were lovely enough to send out this information. So I will, once it's uploaded, would hopefully be by the end of today, this presentation I will disperse out to them to send to all of you. But if you have any questions for Tony, feel free to put them in the Q&A or chat.
I can make sure you get a copy of the presentation.
Okay, yeah.
I might have to, very likely we'll have to convert it to a PDF because I think it's a fairly large file and I don't know if it'll go through if I don't. So
wait a few seconds here. I just accessed the chat here for everyone. So
my contact information back on the screen. So people can see that.
yes, yes, thank you. I'm not seeing any in the chat or in the Q&A. But if any of you do have any questions, yes, feel free to email Tony and he'll be able to help assist you.
Yep, absolutely. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I had a little bit of trouble getting in, and then obviously a little bit of trouble maneuvering with Zoom, but I think we got the point across.
Yes, yeah. No, thank you so much, Tony, for presenting, and thank you everyone for listening in. And yeah, hopefully this was all great information. So thank you so much.
Great. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, you too.
All right,
bye, everyone.